I am basically a practical utopian. And I'm not an engineer, I'm not an architect. What follows is a gathering of ideas and inspiration and energy from around the world, but to every wonderful idea I have to apply this really practical screen, is will it meet the needs of the future? And we need to build a vision, as I'll show as we go through this thing. So when you think about the future of the world, this is a personal question to each of you, what do you feel? So tune in now to the next 30 years. What do you feel? Is it excitement, hope, uncertainty, worry, or fear? Hands up those who are excited about the future. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hey, 6, 5 and a bit, 5.5. Those who are hopeful about the future. 1, 2, 3.5. Uncertain, 4.5. Those who are uncertain, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And worry, up, a lot of worry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and fear. Yep, fear, we got 3 for fear. So we're definitely down below the median line when it comes to this stuff, and we're quite reasonable. So now for just some playful stuff, how would you like to live? I'll give you a choice of some buildings. Do you fancy living in a setup like this? Or that? What's your preference? Hands up who'd like to live in this one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 versus this one. The rest of you. Okay, next choice. How would you like to live in this kind of a city? How hands up would like to live in that kind of thing?
Versus.
You don't know the alternative, sorry. Or this, there's your alternative. It's not really fair because one's urban and one's rural, but there you go. Hands up for this one. 1, 2, yes, 5 or 6, and hands up for this one. That's a pretty good shape. My next dyad is this good old urban downtown, right transit pedestrian. This future? Or this future? What's your choice? Hands up for this one. Pretty good showing. And who wants to really go a la Hobbit? 3, 4. And then I think, well, this future, we're getting more green modernistic here. Or this. That's a traditional Japanese farming village. So what's your choice there? This future? The real polarity is 1, 2, 3, or this. When I do this with Japanese language students who have no knowledge about green stuff at all, and 100% of them want to live in a traditional, old-fashioned farming village. Really interesting. Complete alienation from the modern city world. Well, we have to go. Who wants to live in this one? Or,
wow, that looks really
or this one? There's a choice. Any votes for this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, we got several votes for that one. Top floor or ground floor, I should say. or this one, which is Anna Gord's house in the Highlands. That's about 50-50. Okay, we as a planet, we've come along, all of our ancestors live like this. So we've come a long way from living like that to this. Unbroken flow of genetic information transfer, unbroken flow of cultural transfer. But we've also come to this, the reality of what we're doing to our poor, beaten up planet. And to this, taken quite near this room on Vancouver Island, and to this reality of what we're doing to our planet. And if everyone lived like we do, we need 2 more planets to sustain the constant flow of resources we're pulling out of the ground, the energy we're pulling out to make life happen. We're putting 1,000 tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere every second from our activities 24 hours a day around the world. And the atmosphere the temperature is accumulating. So if you had a friend whose temperature looked like that, you'd go like that. Oh my God, Daddy, you're going to die. Our planet is looking like that and heading for that. We need the same kind of gut reaction because we're looking at carbon pollution is going to end the entire era of stable climate over the last 10,000 years. That's where we're heading already. We're on the upward curve, and we have an emergency we're facing. There is no way on the present path we're going to be able to stop below 2 degrees Celsius increase. We're heading for 4 degrees Celsius increase, and 4 degrees paradoxically collapses the global economy. So the reasons we're trying to say, well, we can't do climate change because it might harm the economy, will actually kill the economy because we can't survive 4 degrees Celsius. With cities, coastal cities facing $1 trillion in flood damage by 2050, just all the repairs. And then just last week we saw one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful storm ever to hit land on the planet in the Philippines. Massive, 2 million people I think it was, out of homes displaced. So the last time the temperature was 3 degrees warmer, the sea level was 25 meters higher, which is like more than an 8-story building. So how do we respond to sea level rise on a simple thing? You know, do we go the Dutch way? Does everyone get to live in a house like that goes up and down with the tides on those posts? Or the same buildings from the front with the posts? There we are from above. Another version of floating houses. Another version in Louisiana, when you just put it on styrofoam, but the same post, it floats up with the tide. And a simpler version. But in reality, okay, of course, these are the ones, if you've got a tax haven, you can afford this, right? If you haven't got a tax haven, or even you've got a big tax haven, you live in that, right? Or if you've got no tax haven, you do that. But in reality, we're talking about cities. And all these people, you know, a lot of Vancouver is at sea level, needing to live somewhere. So it ain't gonna work, living in little, you know, floating bunkhouses like that. There's New York, also at sea level. We've got a major challenge here. And so when we look at the carbon dioxide, in 1750, before the industrial age, that's how much natural CO2 is in the atmosphere as part of the natural biogenic cycle of trees breathing in and breathing out. We've added that much from burning fossil fuels since 1750, mostly burning fossil fuels, also tearing down rainforests. That's how much more we can afford to burn in order to stay below 2 degrees. And that's how much the fossil fuel companies have got listed on their reserves, on which their stock values are placed, which they're planning to burn. So it doesn't work. We have to leave 80% of those fossil fuels in the ground. So basically, on business as usual, we're heading for the cliff. We're the great buffalo jump, you know, of the world. And we're looking to collapse. But if we turn left, there's a whole other future. We just take our gaze away from business as usual and look over there, there's a completely different world waiting for us to see. So what is our vision of that future? Because if that future becomes so attractive, we're all going to want to turn there, and no one's going to want to carry on towards the cliff. If there's no vision to look for, habit kicks in and no one knows what to do. So we've got to have a vision that is more powerful than the fear. That's the piece that's been missing in the entire climate debate for the last 25 years. So what is our vision of the future? On the grand scale, is it this kind of beautiful thing? Is it this, the megalopolis? Or is it this, the hobbitopolis? But let's get real, folks. What do we actually do in 20 years' time, which is the period of crisis? We look at the best green building policies. We get them in place. First of it means all existing climate actions legislation needs to be strengthened. BC's legislation right now calls for our goal is a 33% reduction below the 2007 level. We need to, and we're nowhere on track to meet that. We're heading backwards. So we've got to strengthen all the existing legislation and really give it teeth. We need a new green building code that would say all new buildings must be energy labeled, zero carbon, zero toxics, solar ready with EV charging, level 2 EV charging. We need that all existing buildings must meet the new code, 50% of the new code, sorry, at the point of sale. So you can't sell your building without upgrading to 50% of the new code. And if you're spending more than so much money on a new kitchen, you've also got to upgrade for energy efficiency. If you can afford $20,000 for a marble top kitchen, you can afford the money to retrofit your house. Any permitted improvement project more than 5,000 square feet must upgrade to the new building code, or as close as you can get with a retrofit. All buildings over 10,000 square foot must track and report their energy use annually, which is what San Francisco is doing. So if someone's in charge and you know what's happening in the building. You need on-bill financing for energy efficiency upgrades so that you can get an automatic loan through your utility to cover the cost of it, repayable through your utility bills, and sustainability checklists at local council levels for all developers. Those pieces would put in place what comes to follow. And then green building grants, education, technical services to help with the shift. So I have 10 themes I'm covering. The first is energy efficiency. You can go out on a snowy day and you can see buildings erected within the last 15 years that are losing snow because they just don't have a decent insulation. You can do infrared photography and find out what's going on. You can do it on a whole street level. This is happening in London. You can see a whole block of streets where they're losing energy and a school that's obviously not. So most of the 2032 building stock will be today's buildings. So we've got to retrofit the lot. The building envelope, changing heat to heat pumps, changing power to solar PV, and using the finance to do it. So it's everything from the red blower door to find out, where the leaks are in your home, to the extra insulation. Internal wall insulation is now going ahead in Britain. It's on the inside of your rooms. External wall insulation is happening in Britain to actually add an extra layer outside the house. If you haven't got a cavity wall in a lot of the world, what do? And a lot of Britain's houses don't have cavity walls, so you add an external wall like this. And that's a close-up in detail of what the external wall looks like, with foam insulation in the middle. The organisation Architecture 2030 has really gotten a good handle on the commercial buildings, with a vision of getting them down to zero, being totally carbon neutral by 2030. And what's driving it is the impact of materials, the impact of energy, the impact of water, and the human use, them all. So basically, the current US building stock is what it is. A certain amount will be demolished by 2032. A whole lot will be renovated. And there'll be new construction on top of that. So then the goal is to get the fossil fuel use right down to zero and carbon neutralize what's left of it, and substitute with efficiency and renewable energy. So to take an example, a New York State building in a partnership with Rocky Mountain Institute got a 38% energy use reduction just by, I think, was 6 basic measures they used, which is window refurbishments, insulated radiative barriers, changing the chiller plant speeds and stuff like that, adding air handling units, wireless control networks, all very technical stuff, changing the plugs and lighting, adding daylighting, and doing tenant energy management. So they've really maxed out what you can get for existing buildings. That's pretty good. 38% is about as high as you can get. That's all done cost effectively with payback. For new homes, we can achieve a 90% heat energy reduction. And right here in Victoria, the passive house built by the Bernhardt father and son have shown that they can do that for effectively the same cost as a regular new building. That's what it looks like. It's up in Saanich. Looks like any regular building. And what are they doing here? They've got a 16-inch foam insulation under the slab and outside the foundation walls. They've got 8-inch studs. They've got special triple glazed windows. They've got a second interior wall for the servicing. Air tightness, blown cellulose insulation, heat recovery ventilation, natural gas for hot water and space heating with a little online and on-demand heater. Minimal stuff. And the mathematics shows that the total construction cost was only 4.3% more than if it had been a regular house. This is a duplex, by the way. So it's 2 homes in one, hence the building cost of $740,000. But the payback time is 0 years because the savings on energy are greater than the extra mortgage cost for the 4.3% increase. And they said this is the first time they built a house like this, so next time round, and they're working on a new project right now, they want to get the price down so that it's even equal. That's the triple glazed window insulation they're bringing in to make these things happen. These are other passive houses throughout Europe. In a passive house, you don't need any heat until it's -10 outside. You don't need any air conditioning until it's +35 outside, because the insulation and the air tightness and the air exchange looks after all that sort of stuff. There's 25,000 of these houses built in Europe, 10 times more efficient. These are all examples of passive houses, so architectural style can be all sorts of stuff. Using 90% less energy. When you add solar to the top, they become, zero net energy. All possible, all doable. Then we look at other building materials that get efficiency. So stabilized insulated round earth with the company on Salt Spring is getting R50 in the walls, which is on par with the passive house. It's 13 times thicker than the same thickness, it's getting 13 times more efficiency than a regular concrete wall, and 5 times more than a regular round earth wall. There's straw bale, there's construction, which can give you lots of beauty, there's cob construction, and there's Ann and Gore bed in the Highlands, and then the numbers look like this. A tent is R1, for contrast. High-end stick frame is R20, cob is up to R20, straw bed up to R55, passive house R50, a sidewall R50. So you can get that incredible efficiency there. When we come to zero net housing, the law now in California is that every new home must be zero net energy and emit no carbon and give power back to the grid starting in 2020. And in Britain, every new home must be zero carbon starting in 3 years' time. So they just made it the law for the whole country, and the whole building industry knows that. We could have done this in British Columbia back in 2007, when we brought in our climate action legislation. But whenever you bring it up, the BC Home Builders Association basically, doesn't want to know. They've got reasons, and we've got reasons. So then we look at the actual heating for buildings that aren't, passive house that need some kind of heat. If we look at the family of renewable energy heat pumps, there's a whole lot of stuff coming in on this. So a basic air source heat pump is actually a solar heat pump. Because what the engineers call it an air source heat pump, and they'll talk engineeringese about it. But right now, Train are advertising on the television, saying nothing is like a train, and they can be blown up. And I asked Carolyn, my wife, do you know what they just advertised? She said, I haven't a clue. They don't say that it's a heat pump or that it's there to heat the home. It's just a train, it's something technical. But all of the air that's put through a heat exchanger in an air source heat pump is heated by the sun. It's a solar heat pump, guys. And if the market called it a solar heat pump, we get a lot more uptake to use them. There are lots of these things all over Victoria already heating their homes from the heat of the sun. And in our coastal climate, when it's not -20, it's just fine for your needs. There's a ductless mini split solar heat pump just for one room, if you've got no duct system in your house. So you can substitute for baseboard heaters if you want to. Then this is a solar air moisture heat pump, unknown in the whole of North America, but happening all over Europe. It's called the Octopus Ice Stick. It's happening throughout Scandinavia, throughout Poland, the coldest Ukraine, and that's what it looks like. And basically, this is taking solar air moisture, or air moisture heated by the sun. So it causes, the pipes condense water vapor from the air, causing the refrigerant to warm and evaporate. As the evaporated gas moves to the compressor, it raises its temperature. The pump sends the accumulated heat to the built water system, and as the heat is dispersed, the pressure falls and the refrigerant goes back. So repeat the cycle. So it's saving 50 to 75% on heating costs, and operates down to -25 Celsius, and that church crucifix is a heat pump. Show what's possible, right? Ground source heat pump, this is, there's a long debate, is ground source heat solar heat or geothermal heat or a bit of both? And it depends how deep you go, basically. If you're drilling down deep, it's definitely geothermal. If it's surface, it's probably solar. But this is doable throughout the prairies. Normally, you dig a trench like that and you lay your coils through the trench. In Europe, they're doing radial drilling. So one little hole in the garden, and they can put in the drilling like that, and the whole garden stays in place. No one needs to dig up the roses, and they retrofit through the pipes the heat pump exchange units, and in one day, 24-hour operation, they got a ground source heat pump installation installed, as opposed to the kind of upheaval that we're used to over here, when you've got to dig up the whole yard for this sort of thing over and over. So obviously that's going to be cheaper as well, you do it that way. Water source heat. The college in Mill Bay, Brentwood College, the arts centre there, is heated by water from the Saanich Inlet. To you and me, it is hypothermal, but hypothermal for us is a lot warmer than absolute zero, so heat pump process takes the heat out of the ocean and heats the building. So wherever we have access to the ocean, we can heat buildings. Ice source heat. Whenever you make ice, you've got to reject heat. So this is the Richmond skating oval, which built, and the heat is being put into nearby buildings. Unlike our ice rink here, where it just gets dumped outside and nothing comes of it, because they were too rushed and bothered to have intelligent engineering when they built the new centre. This project in Britain is combining solar PV, a biomass boiler, air source heat pump, ground source heat pumps, and solar thermal panels on the roof into an energy centre. And they're way into negative carbon. Down here, the apartment is like 60% below into negative carbon territory because of all this stuff they're doing. So it's actually contributing back. So district heat systems now, when you have one central source of heat for several buildings, if you're in a city situation, is again a big thing to go look at, because it can give both heating and cooling. If you've got a geothermal district heat system, you take the heat out in the summer and put it back in the winter. And you have pre-insulated piping of the kind that exists in Scandinavia and Europe, can carry heat from the district heat centre for 15 miles or 23 kilometres, while only losing a couple of degrees below 200 degrees Celsius. So you can, this kind of pipe can't be bought in North America, but it can be bought in Germany, Austria, Sweden, and places like that. So you can do long distance district heat. In Vancouver, the sewage works at Falls Creek has got a district heat system for the Olympic Village. out of the liquid, energy in the liquid in the sewage. And Vancouver is planning to retrofit as much as possible on the transit line where you've got high density with district heat systems, using waste heat from hospitals anywhere nearby. In Sweden, there are 80,000 apartments being heated by the heat from treated sewage. They plumbed and engineered the city, so when they built the apartments in Hammarby Sjöby, I'm sure that's not the right pronunciation, they're plumbing it into the sewers. And in Vienna, where they're using an old waste incinerator, they're heating 60,000 apartments at the same time. So this stuff is happening. Beddington Zero Energy Development in London, which was probably the first of the zero carbon developments. It's super efficient, smart meter, combined heat and power. They basically were cutting down trees that were being cut down for hydro lines and stuff locally. They'd normally send it to the landfill. The plan was to sort of chip those up and put them into a heat plant, which is shown at the energy centre at the back of the building, and then have biomass heat system. They ran into the first set of problems with a 1.0 technology that didn't work properly, and so they now had to improve it. The same happened in Dockside Green. So right here in Victoria, Dockside Green is planned for district heat from waste wood, but the waste wood was contaminated, it had stuff in it, and the building wasn't built out to full capacity, so now they're just burning natural gas. Maybe when they get Dockside Green back on track with the other parts of the development, they can go back to gasified wood waste. So this is new technology that we've got to learn about. In Okotoks, Alberta, there's a whole district heat system when it is -20, using solar thermal energy gathered in the summer. So the panels on the roofs there are only for the local hot water inside the house. The panels on the garage roofs are generating far more energy than is needed. 800 panels are gathering a huge amount of hot water during the summer and pumping it underground into the energy center where there's no groundwater intrusion. So there's nothing to take the energy away. In the winter, they take the heat back and it goes back into the homes. So they're literally, these houses are operating right now, 90% of their energy is coming from the heat gathered over the summer. Because this was a first generation project, there was a lot of money spent on it, and each house cost a lot extra. But the houses aren't really even passive solar design. So if they were passive solar as well, they only need 10% of the heat, you're way ahead of the game. So this, in Germany, there's a lot more seriousness of year-round solar thermal heating happening. Each of those roofs is gathering solar thermal energy to store it under the building for year-round heating. The same goes with these roofs here on a residential system. And the goal of the European Solar Thermal Association is that they want to get to 100% solar thermal heated, and by 2030, 50% of all new buildings in Germany, or in Europe rather, will be heated by stored solar thermal. Some really good engineering going to be happening there. So then the third theme is solar energy, direct PV. This is outside Freiburg in Germany, where the entire roof gets solarized. And there's work, there's effort, it's all doable, it's all happening. This is the Taiwan Solar Soccer Stadium, where the entire roof there is solar energy. And there's examples of that from all over the place now, because the solar revolution is in full rip. Basically, the falling solar price over the last few years has been meeting the rising price of electricity, and there's now a number of jurisdictions around the world which have passed solar grid parity, where it's cost effective to go for solar, no other questions asked, no need for subsidies at all. The growth has just been phenomenal, with 100,000 gigawatt added in 2012. Huge growth in solar. And the percentage growth in the States way outstrips the other energy, more than coal, more than gas, more than nuclear, everything. Solar is on a roll. It's still very small, but it's got a long way to go. And interestingly, the price of solar in Germany, with the same costing solar panels imported from China, is half of what it is in North America. Because they've got efficiencies of scale around everything else, the marketing, the installations, the balance of system stuff, because they've got more bulk marketing going on and more bulk installation. So we could get to that lower price. Here in Victoria, if you put a 3 kilowatt system on your roof, it'll cost you $15,000 today. Or if you went to if IKEA did what they're doing in Britain here, it will cost you $9,000. It'll generate 3,300 kilowatt hours a year. If you did a bulk install and 30 homeowners got together, you could do it for 12,000. That's a quote from the Vancouver Renewable Energy Corp. So if you look at solar economics, assuming no feed-in tariff, 3 kilowatt system, 3% financing, and 3% inflation in the price of BC hydropower. Today, you're laying out $5,000 per kilowatt, spending $15,000, blah-de-blah-de-blah, you're losing $9,000 over the life of the system. But by 2020, you're $2,000 in pocket. And beyond that, you're more in pocket every year because the price is falling, the price of the solar system is falling, and the price of hydro is rising. So every year you're saving more expensive hydropower. So you can see that somewhere, around 2020, the whole thing takes off, and everyone can start automatically installing solar on their roofs. This is a hybrid solar panel coming in from Portugal, which is actually creating hot water and solar PV at the same time. And I don't know, I haven't seen it in action in North America yet, but and Portugal's a hot, dry country, so maybe, who knows. This is thin film solar PV. Also getting on the market, and it's a totally different baby. It's not taken off yet because we don't know if it's got a 30-year life cycle against UV rays and deterioration and stuff like that, so that's why you don't see it much. Solar hot water, another big possibility. Regular solar tubes. Solar hot water system on a restaurant. Anywhere where you have to have mandatory hot water, hospitals, restaurants, motels, you get good payback financially. And the breakthrough that I can't show you here, actually, this is the city of Rizhao in China. 99% of all the city centre households have got solar hot water systems. Basically looking like this, with a simple tank on the roof. Here in Victoria, and there's no images to show this yet because it's not public yet, but James Smythe from Pacific Solar has re-engineered, basically, let me go back to my house, a system like that, which James installed on my house, so that it doesn't need a heat pump. But the fluid circulates all the time by a regular electrical pump with a battery in case of power outage. And the price falls from 8,000 to 5,000. Major jump because of a technology improvement. And that's going to be coming on stream in January when the new grants are available region-wide, where the Colwood grants are going region-wide in January. So if we look at solar in the human journey, 5 million years of surviving, burning firewood, that tiny slither of time is the age of fossil fuels. So for 500,000 years we burnt solar energy in the form of firewood. For 200 years we burnt solar energy in the form of fossil fuels. And for 1.75 billion years we can burn solar energy in its raw natural form. And the number 1.75 billion is because as the sun starts journeying towards its red giant end, that's when it gets too hot and we got to quit and go somewhere else, right? But I'm not worried about that, frankly. If you can conceive what 1.75 billion years is, it's 1,000 times a million years plus a bunch. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And every single year, the energy gets cheaper for all of those 1.75 billion years. From 2020 onwards, it's free, effectively. And what that means for us as a culture, we haven't really grasped. It's just amazing. Because wind energy is solar, hydro energy is solar also, just our gravity. So let's look at smart electronics and the way that fits into this. The house off button. When you leave your house, press one button and it powers down every appliance, it switches off every light apart from the stuff that's on the timer, which is sorted out. So you haven't got to worry about going around the house, switching the lights off and, we'll leave them on because we're coming back later. LED lighting, it's going to be coming of age in the next 10 years. Already, you're seeing them around and the price is falling. They're still, between 10 and 25 bucks a light bulb, but the revolution is coming. This is an LED chandelier of really fancy type stuff that's coming on board. Then we have Walmart is now, as well as its solar kits, selling LED lighting cheaper because they do the bulk discount, begin to get them into mass demand so that there's normalizing LED lighting. This is a fun little thing called the gravity light. You have it on your front doorstep and you pull the cord and it's giving you 3 seconds to pull the weight, will give you 25 minutes of light by pure gravity transfer through some sort of system. Developed for third world usage, right? But hey, zero energy apart from a hand pull. And then Li-Fi instead of Wi-Fi, which means light fidelity instead of wireless fidelity. So you're sending your digital information signals through the light source, using the light spectrum instead of the other spectrums that can be harmful to our health. And this isn't invented, this is out of New Scientist, it's being developed. So it means that we don't need to worry about Wi-Fi anymore. If you've got a light source in place, you can have the digital signals coming straight to your information device. And that's the whole technology, the whole thing works, how it all integrates in the new house of the future. We also have a smart thermostat. So the Nest thermostat will learn from your behavior. When do you come and go? When you're in the bathroom? What kind of temperature do you like it? And it'll optimize your comfort while minimizing your energy use from one little appliance, and you can play with it on your smartphone wherever you want and adjust it when you're away. And then half of our, what does that say? It says half of the energy comes from art. Nothing to do with the environment, but it's fun. You just click the clicker and you download the art you want according to the dinner party or who you want to have friends with that evening. We've got digital music, or digital everything else. There's no reason we can't have digital art today, because all the art that's more than 50 years old is completely out of copyright, folks. All the old masters are going to be free on a download. I don't know why someone's not doing it. Water, the fifth theme. We need to be normalizing the dual flush toilet with the water basin on top of it. So we're minimizing water wastage. And we need to make it allowable to have composting toilets inside the house. It can't be mandatory for everyone. You can't be required, because there are a lot of Rob Fords in the world who aren't always functional. And so you've got to allow for dysfunctional housing. Rainwater storage, another big thing for the future. So we're planning ahead to not be impacting the water systems. And then on top of that, bioswales to capture the rainwater on the street. So we're getting rainwater soaking back into the street and converting the street to something more beautiful at the same time. And then porous pavement outside the house. This is actually concrete that the water goes right the way through. So if you look at the road carefully, the front part of the road is porous and the next part is not. Otherwise, all the water running off into the storm drain is carrying all the pollution and dirt into the ocean. And when in a storm surge or problem, you've got sewage backup happening because the drains don't work, and meanwhile you're drying out the land. So look at thinking about water for the future, conservation credits. So if you're a builder in 2032 and you want a building permit for a new house, there are water conserving actions in existing houses that earn conservation credits. There are water conserving companies going around knocking on doors and say, can I retrofit your house and make it more water efficient, save on your water bills, and earn you some credits? And then the builder must buy the credits from existing owners to qualify for a building permit for the new house. So that means that there's a net increase. The net increase in water use from new houses is zero until you've maxed out your efficiency. And the more you squeeze, the more valuable the efficiency permits become. And when you squeeze it all out, you change to a new system. Theme 6 is green roofs and green walls. This is the invasion of nature coming back into our cities in an informal way or in an organized way. This is the expensive end of the house for a Manchester soccer player, when he's actually built his house right into the mountain. Or in Tokyo, Japan, a regular house. The guy who's leading is Patrick Blanc with his book and all his work. A lot of these buildings are his work. He's from Paris. So you're walking down the street in Paris and the whole building is being reclaimed by nature with an extra skin on the wall so that you don't have water penetration into the walls. This building in Madrid has got 15,000 different plants, 250 different species. And with them come all the insects, the butterflies, the bugs, the wildlife, the birds that come back into that. Spain, a children's library. The Athenaeum Hotel in London, you're walking down the street and suddenly nature's coming back onto the wall. Vancouver Public Library. We can't actually see it because it's hard to get up there, but right up there we've got this green garden growing on the rooftop. This building in Japan has got 35,000 plants in the middle of the city. United Bank of Switzerland. This stuff is happening more and more. Hundertwasser's building in Styria, Austria, where the whole building is just landscaped in so that it's more nature than building. Hundertwasser's work in Vienna, when you can't tell what's nature, what's housing. And that's not a painting, that's an actual photograph. There is more of it, and there's the street level side of this sort of thing. Now, Hundertwasser's not modern, he's 20, 30 years ago now, I would say. But he's just bringing creativity and fun into all this. The fifth law of sustainability. If it's not fun, it's not sustainable. You've got to enjoy yourself. So there's the same building, having fun with yourself. Then we take standard stuff like this, the Semyahu transit station in Surrey, BC. Normal concrete wall, we don't think twice about it. And you can do that to it. It's right now in Surrey, you can go and see it by this Vancouver company called Green Over Grey. So we can plan for this sort of stuff, and the liveliness it brings, the livingness that it brings back in. This is the Gherkin in London, the building in the front. And they're developing a new panel for the glass that looks like that, so they can retrofit the building to look like that.
Cool.
But the creativity that's coming into retrofitting our cities is just, it's bringing a different genre in. Then we get futuristic design. These are Vincent Calabo, who's been playing with actual projects in Taipei, Taiwan. This is not just an idea, it's also high performance. It's got orchards, it's got organic gardens, it's got solar PV, rainwater filtration and stuff like that. what it looks like in context. New, three-dimensional automated CAD design allows you to do complicated tensions on angles and corners and bends that old-fashioned engineering could never do. You can work out the tensile, structural loads with modern three-dimensional design, right, Martin? Yeah. This is the kind of stuff I showed you earlier. The kind of stuff this will be arriving in the Far East. Japan, China, Taiwan, Singapore. They'll be doing this sort of stuff. High-rises that have got nature all over the place, right? And then these are some more of his artistic designs to show what's coming. And then we get really, wild and fancy. Then we get down to earth again with food. And the wonderful image that Vancouver uses, so repurposing its engineers to grow food on the streets. What did that say? Hang on a tick. You're now residing on reserve battery power plugged in. How should that be? So the growing movement of the front yard food gardening, to reclaim the front yard. I was in Vancouver last weekend and I saw people have done this on the boulevards. It's happening here in Victoria as well. Whole, empty courtyard space that they transformed. Space under, I hope this stops this soon. It'll stop, maybe. It's all automatic, folks. Must have a timer in here. Vertical growing, stairwell growing, garden, backyard and growing, all sorts of urban food growing things. And I hope I'm going to control this one in a minute. Otherwise, we've got fun stuff. Stop! Okay. The market response is interesting. This is just two very brief themes here. Because how does the market respond to a new green building? Whenever you have a logo of some kind, you have some sort of certification, whether it's LEED or Living Building Challenge or one of the many programs that are happening, there was a big survey done in the Seattle area. And they found that in 2009, certified green homes, which were 33% of the new home market, had a 37% premium per square foot and were the market for 22% less time. And in July, almost 50% of new homes were being sold with a green certification. Once the level passes 50%, the appraisers have to discount the value of a house that is not certified green, because green certified buildings become the new norm. So in the recent climate collaborative agreement that BC signed with Washington, Oregon and California, there was a commitment to do energy labeling at the point of sale and energy upgrade at the point of sale. I don't think people in government know that yet, but they did sign on to that, so hopefully we'll see it happening here. So then the ninth theme is green streets and neighborhoods. So we need to thinking, redesigning, remodeling, reclaiming space from the dull, if you live on that place on the left, you have no fun at all, but every 3 years the Stanley Cup happens in Vancouver, you're going to have a riot. So life is so boring in the suburbs. It was fun in 1945. It was better than Chicago suburbs, or Toronto suburbs, but now it is boring. When you reclaim it, do fun stuff with it. So it starts with tiny stuff like the curb cuts, adding extra greening, narrowing down the streets at the same time, celebrating the intersections, like happening in Portland, Oregon. Organizing, getting the neighbors on the street, so you're building social capital, building friendships. Narrowing down the street from a normal 3-lane street to basically a 1-lane street with parking places. So now you're connecting, you're talking, you're slowing down, the street becomes a human place. Redesigning houses so that you haven't got a road in the middle at all. You've got a human meeting space, as every village in the world before the year 1900 was like. Pocket neighborhoods, it's called, so you can actually build it into any new development. And what happens is people start reconnecting, and they move, the house, instead of becoming a little prison with fancy devices inside it, becomes part of a neighborhood where you've got friends and relationships. This is a brand new development. It's not an old-fashioned development from Victorian England, it's a brand new development designed around a beautiful tree. And this is an old development in Japan, where they did density transfer on the right-hand side, and you've got this wonderfully quirky, curvy green neighborhood on the left-hand side. This is a similar project by Hundertwasser in Germany, playing with fun while you're building and creating neighborhood at the same time. And then the final theme has to be affordability when we look into all this stuff. Right now, a 2-story house in Vancouver, average price $1.15 million for a regular 2-story house. The kind of stuff that 20 years ago when I moved to Victoria, you could buy in a Esquimalt for $150,000 or $100,000. A detached bungalow, over $1 million. And a condo, almost $500,000. So even to get the down payment, you've got to have $200,000, $300,000 in the bank to be able to afford the mortgage. So we have a huge crisis here. So one of the number of solutions, communal living, currently not allowed in Vancouver, actually changing the laws. There was a piece in the San Francisco newspaper 3 days ago showing how all they're not called yuppies anymore, but the new smart, geeky characters are buying up the old mansions that the head of Apple and Google used to have for themselves and living in them collectively. So you can buy an 8-bedroom house in North Vancouver today for $1.5 million. I found it online, which is $250,000 each, 8 owners, one in each bedroom, and you share the whole house. You've got your foot in the ground. Laneway housing. If all the back lanes allow laneway housing, ideally with no parking permits, so you don't get to have a car. You belong to a car share cooperative, you have good transit and cycling, rainwater collection, zero net energy, so there's not an extra burden on the city's services. Rooftop housing, where you've got a flat roof, you can put a loft cube on top of it all and live in it. There's a lot of flat roof sitting around there doing nothing. Shipping container homes. These are being built in Vancouver right now, where the average cost of a unit, they're small, they're deliberately affordable, at they're around 280 square feet. Base cost $85,000, and a similar size unit with regular construction was like $155,000. Community land trusts, getting the land out of private ownership becomes a big breakthrough in here. So we look at the financing. How do we get the money? And then finally, how do we get money to buy the land to build the housing? These are ideas I put into my new book, Set in the Future. A progressively increasing tax on real estate sales over $1 million. A 15% which will depress prices and get money in the bank. 15% sales tax on properties bought through offshore companies where they got their hands in the offshore banking tax fields. An annual levy on expensive properties registered offshore, where they're also trying to avoid taxes. An escalating land tax on empty properties where they're sitting waiting for the land to escalate so they make pure profit. And the money going into an affordable housing authority has been proposed for Vancouver and used in community housing circles run by the community associations to buy land owned by a land trust and build housing. If you're on the property market, you don't want to be in a land trust because your land value will not increase in value. But if you know that you're never going to be able to buy a house, and you're in a land trust, and you've got secure housing for life that your children can inherit, you're going to say it's a pretty good deal. And we have to remember in all this that the dream is a city free of fossil fuels, and it's an urgency thing. The Arctic sea ice, we lost 80% of its volume since 1980. We have an emergency on our hands. The clock is ticking fast all the time. We're nowhere near reacting fast enough. A green sustainable future is not an option, it's an absolute necessity for all of us. And every one of us must become engaged in some particular hands-on way. So it's, as the Queen would say, keep calm and change the world. Or in a bottom-up approach, we can change the world. That's my book, The Climate Challenge, that lays out all the solutions to global warming in total. This whole presentation is on SlideShare. You can download the whole thing from SlideShare right now. Just go to slideshare.net, type in my name, and you'll find it there along with a bunch of other presentations. That's my website, and thank you very much for listening, folks.